So hello, my name is Michael Scott Forehand. Today is February the 29th. This is the last February 29th Debt-Free Life Infinite Banking presentation we're going to do for the next 4 years. Okay, so you're here for a very special event. Okay, so I want to go ahead and typically what we do with these programs is we'll have the first 30 minutes. We're going to go into an actual formal presentation of an infinite bank or a debt-free life program, and we'll use a case study. We're still going to do that, except we're going to go in reverse this time, because one of the key things that's interesting about using infinite banks, especially as a debt elimination tool, is how you can really take advantage and destroy an amortization schedule if you have a mortgage. So right now, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you an example using a mortgage and what it does to the amortization schedule using an infinite bank and using the mortgage against itself. So let me go ahead and get that started, and slideshow from the beginning. Share. Somebody give me a thumbs up when you can see my screen. Yoo-hoo! Thank you, Ashley. All right, so this is so if you've been to any of the previous presentations, one of the families that we use as a case study is a family that's not abnormally high on the amount of debts they have. They just have a lot of debts. And that's the same family that we're using for this illustration on an amortization schedule. So in this particular example, this family had this much debt. Doesn't really matter. But the point is here, you've got a personal residence, and that personal residence has $215,000 worth of debt. Okay, so that's how much they owe on their home. This is what a total debt. That's actually accurate. Actually, I just spoke with these people about 3 months ago, and they have actually accelerated their program, and they're just about done after only 5 years. This was the original plan for them, 7.75 years. They have executed the plan flawlessly. And as a matter of fact, they actually added in one additional debt. The gentleman that this program was originally written on is a over-the-road trucker, and he was purchasing or was going to purchase his own rig, and he had designs on building a business around owning rigs and basically leasing rigs out to other drivers. And his plan previous to this was he was going to buy a new rig about every 2 years or 3 years. And with this program, he's actually already bought 2 rigs. So he's greatly accelerated his business plan as well. And this was the plan. It was gonna work great, and still gonna work great. But we're gonna focus on one debt only. And we're gonna focus just on a mortgage. Okay, so this is how mortgage chunking works. If you're looking at a mortgage chunk plan, then we're going to make a couple of assumptions. And that last infinite bank program, that profile that we just looked at, is actually what we're seeing here. So we have a debt. The mortgage that they had was $215,000. That's our first assumption. We're going to assume that we've gotten through the debts in 2.3 years, which is what that plan called for. It was a lot of the smaller debts. And when I say smaller debts, and it says some people, this doesn't sound like a small debt, but it really is. A small debt's anything really under $20,000 with the size of these programs. So a lot of the smaller debts get paid off earlier in these plans, simply because it's easier to tackle them. It frees up more money for the debt snowball. And usually those smaller debts happen to be associated with credit cards, which is problematic because credit card interest rates are so high. So there's a lot of reasons why we eliminate those smaller, higher interest credit card debts first. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. So we're assuming that we get out of most of the debts with the exception of the mortgage in 2.3 years. And then once we get all those debts eliminated, we've got that snowball built. And all that is, just to sum it up, all the snowball is just the minimum amount of money they were paying on debt service for all those debts that have been eliminated. That's it. There's nothing magical about it. It's just, this is how much money you have. This is how much money you make. This is how much money you spend on debt service. And that's going to become, all of that eventually will become your debt snowball. Now, what we know is best laid plans, right? You can make a plan and the plan will work if people follow it to the letter. But most of the time, life gets in the way and things don't exactly work out the way that we plan. And that's okay. These programs are flexible. So the idea here is that we're going to give you a plan. The plan's going to work as long as you follow it. And when you can't follow it or don't want to follow it, maybe you really do want to take 6 months off and just go travel. Okay, it's your life. You do what you want to do with it. And then we just simply put the plan on hold and you make minimum payments or whatever. However it goes down for you. It's your call. It's your program. But the point is that we just want to make sure that we give an accurate plan that will work if followed. And if it doesn't work, it's not because the plan wasn't correct. It's because there's usually some kind of extenuating circumstance that caused an individual not to be able to perform the way that the plan was created. So if we get to the point where we've got that debt snowball, and in that one particular family's case, that debt snowball was $833 a month. That's how much of debt service we freed up in the first 2.3 years. It doesn't mean they're not paying it. It just means that now they're paying it to themselves because they've put money in and borrowed money out and put money in and borrowed money out. That's all that means. So what happens if you look at the amortization schedule for this particular client? So we said the amount that we owed was $215,000. That's a standard, lower, depending on geographically where you're located, that's a lower sized mortgage. Most of the mortgages that I'm seeing these days are 300, 350, 400 for the vast majority of the population out there. So at $215,000, that's when they started the program. And remember, I said it was 2.3 years, right? 2.3 years before they finished and got their debt snowball fully built. So what does that look like? May 2020, we owed 215. In May of 2023, okay, 2.3 years, that's how much just the normal making payments, normal mortgage payments, that's how much would be owed on that property at that point. As we know, and you can see this just on this page, as far as amortization schedules, the way that they work is they're front loaded with interest. Everybody knows that. So if you have a standard 30-year mortgage, it's going to take 20 years paying on the amortization schedule that the banks create for you when they give you the loan. It's going to take 20 years just to pay off half your house because it's all front loaded with interest. They want to make their money up front because they know that you're not going to keep your mortgage. The average mortgage is only kept for 7 years. So they're going to make a lot of money in 7 years. You're going to turn around and refinance. They're going to make a lot of money in 7 years. You're going to turn around and refinance. And it's a cycle. So they know that. And that's why they do these things this way. So if we know that that's what they're doing, then knowledge is power. And we can actually use that against them. So if you look at this, and this is a standard amortization schedule for $215,000 over 30 years with an average interest rate, I think it was 4.2% or something like that. So if you look at October of 2023, the mortgage, the premium they were paying, principal and interest premium, it doesn't change. It's just it skews slightly each month where you're paying a little bit more principal and a little bit less interest. So, and to illustrate that, in October of 23, we had $800 of the premium payment going towards interest and $339 going towards principal. The very next month, we had $799 going towards interest and $340 going towards principal, and so on. So every time we make a mortgage premium payment, we're increasing the efficiency of every other payment downline. Okay, because the very next payment I'm paying more principal and less interest, and then after that more principal, less interest, and it's skewing over time. A mortgage chunk allows you to accelerate that process. You can make it move a lot faster than what they want you to, and here's how that works. So remember, let's go back. This is where we started, May of 2020, $215,000. This is where we are, May of 2023. 2 years later, we're down to $203,000. So we've paid off. Hi, are you with I don't know. You had a comment, Lorraine?
My guardianship says that's 3 years.
Okay. I believe that you're right.
This time.
Thank you. Okay. So in 3 years, then we are down to the point where we are at 203,000. That's great. Okay. So at $203,000, what happens if at that point, and there, I know why I did it this way. It's because there's the at year 2.3, we're out of all the basic little debts. And then this is at year 3.0. So that 0.7 years is getting us to the point where that $833 is building up enough money where we have a $10,000 chunk that we can pull out. That's why we're on this particular date. Okay. So now we're at 203. And now I have $10,000 that's built up in my infinite bank. Got 10K that's not encumbered. All those payments I've been making and my snowball I've been playing with and doing my job and executing the plan, I've built this up to the point where there's 10K. That's not the magic number. The magic number is different for each person. It's different for each debt load, and it's whatever they end up being comfortable. I mean, if you have some people that say, "Yeah, I want to do this every 2 months." Okay, that's up to them. That's a lot of work. I'm just using 10K because it's an easy solution, an easy number here. So in year 3.0 to be exact, thank you, Lorraine, we owe $203,000. We take a $10,000 loan from our infinite bank and give it to our mortgage company and say, hey, apply this to 100% principal payment. So remember, as we're moving forward in time with every regular mortgage payment, we're skewing slightly how much interest and how much interest is being paid less than the previous month and how much principal is being paid more than the previous month every time you make a payment. But in this case, we're not making a payment. We're not making a payment, in this case, of $332 towards principal. We're making a payment of $10,000 towards principal. And that debt balance of 203,000 immediately overnight changes to $193,000, which means we just accelerated a whole bunch of months into the future. How far? Well, somebody count. So we're in May of 2023, and we need to get to $193,000. That's September of 2025. So what is that? All right, luckily I got enough fingers. I'm going to count. Okay. 28. So we got 28 months of advancement. So what did that do? We paid $10,000 of principal, right? Absolutely we did. What else did we do? We saved 28 payments of interest. Calculator. If, and this is not the case, if all the interest payments for those 28 payments is only $770, right? We know it's more because it's decreasing every month, but let's just use 770 because it's nice and easy and the number's right there. We just, not only did we pay off $10,000 of mortgage, reduce the principal amount owed by $10,000, made each payment so that it's significantly more efficient paying off principal. We also eliminated $21,000 of scheduled interest. That is massive. So a single $10,000 payment, remember, because when we amortize a debt, it's not just how much do you owe principal wise, it's how much of the scheduled interest do you have, are you going to pay if you stay on the track that you're on right now? Because that's the real value. We're saving a ton of money. So in this case, $10,000 eliminated $31,560 of debt. That's pretty strong. I don't know anywhere in the world where you can go and get a 3-to-1 return whenever you want on the money that you have. And that's kind of what a mortgage chunk does. So one more thing I want to draw your attention to, okay? This is where we were. May of 2023. We were making interest payments of $807, principal payments of $332. Overnight, this is where we are. 332 to 369. Anybody want to do the math on that? 369 minus 332 is $37 divided by 369. Overnight, that's a 10% increase in the efficiency of our debt elimination strategy with our mortgage. That means we are 10% more efficient paying down principal than we were the day before, simply by doing this $10,000 payment. That's on top of the fact that we are also paid down $31,000 of the total debt over time. So that's how mortgage chunking works. That's why it's so significant. That's why it's so effective. And that's why the banks don't want you to do it. So that is the end of that little part. So let's do this. I'll close that out and see if anybody has any question before I move on to the next one. I know Tanya's got a question. I know Mike's got a question.
You're right. I do have a question.
Yay!
I always have questions.
Yay!
So Scott, what's the cost of that? So in order to do that, right, there was a loan that was taken from the policy, correct?
Yep.
What's the cost of that loan to offset the benefit you're getting from the mortgage chunk payment?
The entire cost of this program over time is going to be less than making one mortgage chunk payment.
Okay.
It's negligible. Because if you're looking at, even if my program, in this particular case, I think this was an $800 a month program to begin with. So we're spending $800 a month to save hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest and create hundreds of thousands of dollars of wealth. I'll be specific about that. It's one thing just to say a number. It's another thing to show you. So let me do that. Okay. So the first thing the program is going to do is save $70,000 of scheduled interest. Now, look, that number is incorrect. That number is if all they do is execute the program the way the software is set up. And we know that, especially if we're going to incorporate mortgage chunking, that that's not the case. Mortgage chunking is not something we can illustrate. It's something we can talk about. It's something we can show people how to do. Ultimately, it's not something that mathematically we're going to be able to show because we don't know. Nobody's got a real crystal ball that works. But here's the thing. So if you do the math, let's do the math. My cost for this program is $32,000 a year. 32,520. And I ran this for, let's say, 10 years. So that means my total cost for the program is $325,000. That's my cost. This is the number you're looking for. My cost, 32.5. Okay, so 325,000. For $325,000, just at the end of the 10th year, I have eliminated all of my debt. I've created net wealth of $272,000 as illustrated right here. And look, this is the other part of this. I created an income stream. How much of an income stream did I create? Let's assume I'm not paying that $32,000 this year. Let's assume I stop in year 10. So in year 10, I've got 272. And then in year 11, I've got 375 minus 272. That means in theory, that grew $103,000 over the course of a year. But if I take out the $32,000 that I spent, that means it created $71,000 per year of wealth, of income. So what's your cost? Your cost is a very large negative number, which means it's a positive, which means it's not a cost, it's a gain. Now that number is skewed depending on when you take that snapshot. If you take that snapshot on month 1, then no, there's a cost because there's a cost of insurance. If you take that snapshot on month 55, you're definitely in the good. You're definitely positive once you consider the amount of debts you've eliminated, the amount of cash that you've built. And then at the end of the day, we're not even talking about the legacy that we're creating. In year 10, the legacy for this program is $1.8 million. It's massive. Does this answer your question, Mike?
Yeah, it does. And I guess now if let's say hypothetically that the client after year 10 can't afford or something happens and they say, I don't want to pay into this life insurance policy anymore after year 10.
No problem. In year 7, they're through. So the programs, if you're structuring them correctly and you're using the right solve, you should be using a TAMRA, TAMRA, 7-pay solve. If you're using the TAMRA 7-pay solve, then the program is a non-mech, which means you're fine. In year 7, if you want, you can say, I don't want to pay anymore, RPU it. And then you call the carrier says, all right, they do some calculations and they say, all right, here's your RPU number. Your permanent death benefit is this. You're still growing at the contractual interest rate of 3% per year, and your current cash value is this, and it's still growing at the contractual interest rate of 3% compounded monthly per year. So, yeah, it becomes a completely self-righting boat, even if you were upside down for a little while, because you're really maximizing the loan capacity of the program.
Right. And you've already achieved what the goal
Yeah,
was.
and you did what you were trying to do. You know,
Right.
there's nothing saying you don't have to do that either, which I think anybody who's in that situation would be foolish to cancel it. Um, but by keeping it active, it's still an infinite bank. It's still something you
Right.
can put money in and grow and pull money out, and nobody can tax you on it. It's still got that
Right.
value as long as it was structured as a non-mac.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, to your point, if you have a client and nothing changes in their life, and I mean they're still earning what they're earning, they have the ability to continue paying what they were paying. So
Right.
why,
Yeah.
why would you stop?
So,
Right.
and in that situation, let's say, they get to, like, this guy wanted to retire at 75. We got him retired in his 50s. And let's say, you know what? I'm still working. I'm not ready to retire yet. I'm enjoying life. I like what I do. I'm going to keep working. Okay. You can keep funding too if you want. You don't have to, but you could. And if he did, then that opens up a whole nother string of possibilities of derivative programs where you can have additional income streams that are created, and even greater diversification of someone's plan. So you've got a lot of options, but this is a great place to start, and it's really where everybody should start if they've got debt. That's the number one killer to retirement. And people that retire with a debt load, it's a mistake, unless you don't have a choice. If you didn't choose and you were given that, you don't have a choice but to retire, and you have to have the debt with you because you don't have enough to pay it off. And it is what it is. But every from what I see, everybody who has a debt load, when they're nearing retirement, should do everything they can in their power to eliminate that debt. I don't mean double pay and triple pay. No, I'm talking about using one of these programs to do it, because this is a much more efficient way to do debt elimination than anything else that's in the market these days. All right. Anybody
So
else?
can I ask you one other question real quick?
Yep. And then we're going to Andy.
Okay. So that annual premium, right? That's I just did the math, $2,700 a month to get to a 32.5 annual premium. So that means the client has to have $2,700 a month available to them to even start this program above and beyond what their current monthly bills are.
Right? No.
Okay.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Here's the yes. This client is spending $5,500 a month on debt service. So the money that I'm using, or I used in this case, to fund this program and make this a zero cost program, came from the current debts that they had that they were overspending. So, for example, the state taxes, they were paying $300 a month to pay their state taxes down fast. Why?
Okay.
It was a 0% interest. Why would you do that? So that's why we did that evaluation and figure out where people are spending and saving money inefficiently, and that's where that 2,700. So that's what you just asked, Mike. That's something that a lot of people, when they first look at this, that's the deer in the headlights moment. What the hell am I going to do? Where am I going to come with $2,700 a month? You're not.
Right.
You're already doing it. It's just
So you have to uncover through looking at all of their debts
right. And
exactly
there's
what's
5
going on.
places that we see it. We see it when people are
Yeah.
trying to overpay debts. We see it when people have life insurance policies that are inefficient. We see it when people are trying to overfund retirement programs, trying to play quote unquote catch up. We see it when people are unusually enamored with the wrong kinds of investments, like, oh, I don't know, something that doesn't really have any value. There's lots of that stuff, NFTs, stuff like that. And then finally, you have people that are, for whatever reason, reluctant to put their money in the bank and reluctant to engage with any kind of investment strategy. So they have cash sitting in a safe in their house, and that's an extremely inefficient way to save. And so that's why we do that calculation and ask those questions and uncover where people are spending or saving inefficiently, repurpose that money, use a portion of it. Usually it's a 65-35 split, meaning 65% of whatever we uncover is going to go to cash growth, and 35% is going to be used for the cost of insurance to get the program to the point where it's large enough to do what we need it to do in the time frame that we needed to do it. And that's just over time and running, hundreds, if not thousands of illustrations, you'll get to that point where you understand that the math.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. Andy, you're up.
On that example where they chunked the 10K to get down to 193.
Yes.
They would be back paying monthly until the next opportunity to chunk, correct?
So anytime you are in all debt elimination strategies, it never calls for the individual to stop paying on the debt.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So in the software, when we did the calculation, the software knew, okay, you're paying 10,000 now. That's on this amortization schedule. That's how I illustrated the $10,000 drop. Okay. But on the very next month, they're still making payments. So they're still making their regular minimum mortgage payment. And we, the last thing in the world we ever want to do with these programs is destroy somebody's credit. That's not the goal here. This is not debt consolidation or debt negotiation. We're not doing that. And we don't market this, but the end result of this program is that people are going to have probably about halfway through the program, they're going to have a significant increase in their credit score, as long as they had the sweet spot of debts, which is about 7 debts. So yes, so the short answer to your question is yes, they're going to continue to pay the minimum debt service on all the debts. And if we're doing mortgage chunking and that's the last debt they have, incidentally, mortgage chunking doesn't have to be used for just mortgages. You can do it with student loans with it. You can do it for big car payments. You can do it for other pieces of property. It doesn't matter. Chunking is chunking. It's just, it's a more efficient way to do things if the debt is an amortized debt. Okay.
So go to your next screen where you had the 193.
Yep.
So they would pay 12 months, for example, and then chunk again.
Yep.
And then drop down another 12.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's how, when you look at this, there's a calculation that you can do. Let me show you that. And it's here. A mortgage chunk routine is going to reduce the time it takes to get out of debt based on the difference in time between the penultimate debt, in this case, this other property, and the final debt, which in this case is the personal residence. So if on schedule, this particular client was going to pay off their rental property in month 71, and on schedule, they were going to pay off this property, the personal residence, in month 93. By doing a mortgage chunk plan, we're going to take that difference, which is 22 months, and we're going to reduce it by 16%, which means a mortgage chunk plan. Understand, a mortgage chunk plan, it's not spending or saving any more money than already spending. It's just using the money more efficiently. So in this case, a mortgage chunk plan is going to get them out of debt 3.54 months faster, which is 16%. The smaller the window, the less of an impact it's going to have. That's kind of common sense. So I've seen places where you've got a lot of debts and they're all small, and they've got the one big debt, which is like a $500,000 mortgage, and they get rid of all their small debts in year 2, and then it's another 7 years before they pay that mortgage off. In that example, a mortgage chunk system is going to drastically increase the rate at which that mortgage is going to get paid off. Because now you're talking about from year 2 to year 9. So you're talking about not 22 months of change. You're talking whatever 7 times 12, you're talking 84 times 0.16. You're talking about over a year. So it's going to, a mortgage chunk plan is going to get them out of debt over a year sooner, 13 months sooner. Did that answer your question, Andy? Yep. All right. Okay. Anybody else? I see Jessica Couture. Are you glazed over?
I am taking it all in.
Taking it all in. All right. There's a quiz. All right. Everybody got their coffee? Laureen?
I have a question.
I thought you would.
So I have a client, and they have I don't know, about $40,000 cash value in their policy. And they are considering taking a loan on that cash value and chunking the mortgage down. And then outside of the policy, they were considering paying $1,000 extra on their mortgage each month. And I said, but what you really should do is to pay that loan back so that you can reborrow sooner.
Yep, that's exactly.
And you would still have your money.
Right. And the reason why you would do that is because of arbitrage and the ability to create arbitrage if you're paying down the loan that you already took. So some of our companies that we use, at least one, allows you to create arbitrage. And some of our companies don't allow you to do that. So, and by definition, all we're talking about arbitrage is all it means is we're able to borrow money at a lesser interest rate than we're able to make with it. That's it. So if I can borrow money at 5% interest, but I can make 12%, then I'm getting 7% arbitrage, right? So if I have if we look at your client that you just described, if you look at $40,000 in their program, take it and chunk it. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Absolutely do it. Go for it. Okay. But paying the extra $1,000 into that, that's exactly the reason why we're doing an infinite bank. So you don't do that. Because when they do that, they take that $1,000 and they throw it at their mortgage company and there's no stop in between, then you're using the money one time. And all you're doing is converting the status of that money from cash in your hand to equity in that property. That's it. It's a one-to-one relationship. There is no gain. Okay. But simply by putting that $1,000 extra into their mortgage every month, or not their mortgage, but into their infinite bank every month, they took a loan for 40. The next month, whatever their debt snowball is paying down that loan, and then they're having $1,000 again. And then maybe they don't have to wait a year to take 40 grand. Maybe they can do it in 9 months, or maybe they don't do 40 grand. Maybe they just start doing it in $10,000 chunks and do a new chunk every 3 or 4 months, which is super strong when it comes to rapid elimination of debts. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, the math, and that's the beautiful thing about these programs. The math doesn't lie. It's not, you can't negotiate it. It's not like, well, I don't think that math. Well, no, the math is the math. You can't argue with the math. Right on. All right. Mike, I see you're still unmuted. Do you have another question?
No, I just forgot to mute.
That's okay. All right. Anybody else before we move on?
Is there a minimum for this, or you just wait for everything to start building cash value first before you start this one?
I didn't hear the beginning part of your question. I'm sorry, Jessica.
Is there a minimum to start doing this that you recommend, or do you just wait for the
Nope.
cash value to start?
Yeah, so my recommendation is always, what money can we find that's being spent or saved inefficiently for the program? There's no reason not to, unless you know that, like, well, okay, well, I've got a $20,000 thing coming up next month I got to be ready for. At that point, there's not enough time for us to get a program approved, issued, put in force, put the 20,000 in and be able to borrow against it. But other than that, there's any money that people have sitting on the sidelines, they'd be foolish to leave it wherever it's at. I don't mean drain your accounts. don't put your bank account down to $10. That's not what I'm saying. But if you're routine, like I ran into a couple last night, got $13,000 in their checking account. And I said, why? Are you going to go out and buy an emergency car? Is that the plan? What do you need $13,000 sitting in an account for? And is it at risk? Well, it's in the bank. Well, did any banks fail last year? So there's lots of negatives about leaving money in a bank, large sums of money. And so in my opinion, it's always going to be better to be in these programs. Even if it's just even if you're not earning anything with it, you're just paying down the previous loan, you're still earning. Because by paying down the previous loan, when you take a loan, the loan is taken upfront. So if I borrow $10,000, the interest on that $10,000 for the next year is paid up front. And if through the course of this program, if I'm paying back, let's say $3,000 a month, that means I owe 10 in month 12 in month 1. I owe 7 in month 2. I owe 4 in month 3. I owe 1 in month 4. And then in month 5, I'm plus 2,000. I paid for an entire year of interest. They only earned an entire year of interest on $10,000 for 1 month. And then on month 2, I only owe 7. So they took a full year, but they didn't earn a full year. They only earned 2 months. So in this case, with the company that I like to use, all that money that they took gets returned, which means if my cost on that interest, this is for you, Mike, if my interest cost on that loan was, nice fast math, 5%. Okay. If it was 5% for the entire year and I just paid it back in 3 months, they didn't earn 5%. They earned 1/4 of 5%. So they earned 75%, whatever the number comes to, 1.5 or something like that. But I'm earning my guaranteed interest and my dividend on top. So they return what they didn't earn. I'm still getting the guaranteed interest on all of it. And that is how we earn arbitrage. So to Laureen's question, does it make sense for them to put 40,000, take 40,000 out and pay? Yep, absolutely. Does it make sense for them to double down and start paying $1,000 extra on their mortgage? Absolutely not. If they can afford to do that, pay it into the bank, earn the arbitrage. And there's one more piece to discuss about that, and that's just how these programs work over time. And one of those things that we look at with that is, if I'm going to pursue eliminating a loan that I've already taken, does it make more sense for me to pursue paying down that loan? Or does it make more sense for me to add more cash value to the program? Okay, so if I'm here, if I've got $10,000 in here and I borrowed $10,000, okay, I've got 10,000 cash, but my loan capacity is 0 because I just zeroed it out. Okay, if I pay $5,000, if I apply it towards the debt, the $10,000 that I borrowed, that means I now have $5,000 borrowing capacity. Not bad, but I only have $10,000 in here working for me. Okay, what happens if I apply $5,000 towards new purchase, new PUA? Okay, and this comes up too. So my loan capacity is now $5,000 more, but now I have $5,000 money earning more interest. So in most cases, mathematically, it makes more sense to pursue purchasing more PUA than it does to pay down the loan. And that's just, it's math. And you have to do the math, but that's the case. So there is, depending on the company, different ways where the dividend, and this is the wild card, where the dividend is calculated. The dividend for the company that I use, there's a bunch of factors that determine how much of a dividend people are going to get. And one of the key factors is, there's actually 4 of them, but the first 2 that you can think of, obviously how much money is in the program is certainly going to affect the dividend, but how old is the person and how long has the money been in the program? So if you have 2 people that are side by side, one's 25 and one's 45, and they both have exactly the same amount of coverage, exactly the same premium, and exactly the same cash value in the program, and they've both been in the program the same length of time, the 25-year-old is going to get a bigger dividend because they're going to have that money to invest for a longer period of time. If the two people were there and they're both the same age, a 23-year-old and a 23-year-old, they both have the same cash value and they both have been investing it for a little bit of time, but the 23-year-old on this hand is actually been in the program for 3 years longer. He's going to get a bigger dividend because they've had the money longer. And then finally, the health of the underlying health of the insured affects this as well. And that goes down to an actuarial table looking at, okay, you've got somebody who is 55 years old and a smoker versus someone who's 55 years old and a non-smoker. The 55-year-old non-smoker is going to live longer, which means the money is going to be able to be used longer by the carrier, which means they're going to give that 55-year-old a bigger dividend, even if everything else was the same. So there's lots of nuance to how these programs can work. And just, you know, I wasn't born an expert. I just asked a lot of questions. Like you're here now doing the same thing. I bugged the crap out of the people that are, you know, at the help desk. And that's where I got all this info. So I think I went way far afield there from where the last question was. I apologize, folks. Anybody else have any questions before we, is there enough time? Yeah, there's enough time. Anybody? Is there anybody here that's looking at this because they're a potential client, or they're looking at this because you're an agent trying to learn how to do these things and how to talk about these things with your clients? Is there anybody here that's a potential client? If you are, now's the time to speak up. All right, George, you are unmuted. Do you have a question, sir?
I think Carl was going to go with, he may be looking to be a client. Let's let him go first, but yes.
Okay.
No, I was going to say, yeah, this is for general understanding to present and feel confident doing that.
Gotcha.
But there's also, I could use some of this personally as well. So,
okay, excellent. So Carl, do you have any significant thing that I haven't touched on that you'd like to hear more about? Since you're relatively, I've seen you before, I believe. I know your name.
yeah, I've been hiding in the shadows and learning how I had a lot more of me to fix than I thought. So there's been a journey in that, but
okay.
Yeah, no, so I need to use it for myself for some things and I need to put it in there, but no, I'm drinking from the fire hose. I'm just jumping in the water right now. So
Okay.
There's nothing specific.
Well, you definitely found the fire hose here.
Oh, I know.
All right. So just a quick poll, everybody. Let's see. George Matthews? Anybody? I'm thinking George Matthews. Yep. I think George, you're parting your hair on the wrong side of your head.
It looks more like Cuba, George Ernest Hemingway than that looks like Norway, Ernest Hemingway there.
Yeah, that you're right. That's Norway, Ireland, Hemingway. All right. Sorry about that. Thanks for allowing me to play, George. All right, George, your turn. I know you were unmuted for a moment.
Yeah, Scott, I think that, you know, in the explanation as we dig into this, and certainly, you know, using your subject matter experts in an important component around this, I think the biggest thing that I see when the layperson that is our client, right, wrapping their head around and our ability to explain the difference between what the cost of the money is and what they're going to gain in interest, that vector right there, how that like, because I think depending on where the interest rates are and everything else right now and the crediting right now, the cost of money, and I think it's been this way for a while, is more than what you're going to receive in interest and dividends. Is that a fair statement?
So the cost of it depends on how much you encumber. I mean, you can still engineer arbitrage. You know, if I've got $100,000 in there and I borrow 50, I'm gonna earn more interest in dividend than I am on the interest I'm going to pay on the 50,000 I borrowed.
Right, so I guess, I mean, certainly we keep that threshold below that number where we know it's gonna be good, but what if someone does get into the maximum,
Right.
relationship between where it's
Right.
like, I think it's like 90% or something, they'll let you take it from MTL, and
Right.
some of the other companies are a little different,
So-
but.
That one piece there that you're talking about, if they're in an active plan and they're actively eliminating debts, which means they're dollar cycling, going up and down and up and down and up and down, okay? It doesn't matter. That means they're following the plan. It doesn't matter. If they are simply taking a massive loan and going out and blowing it, then it does matter. Then they're not eliminating debt. They just transferred debt, and they're making it so that their cost of money. Yeah, I just took $50,000 out because my maximum loan was 52, so I only took 50. Oh, okay, and what are you doing with it? We're buying a boat. I mean, that's a better way to do it than actually going out and getting a loan for it, because now your net cost on that boat is going to be 2% versus the 8 or 9 you're going to get from a lender. Okay, but and this is where at the end of the day it's a personal thing, it's a personal decision. Every single person that's out there, you're responsible for your own finances. I can't help you with that. I can tell you what to do and what not to do. At the end of the day, if you do it, great. If you don't, it's not my fault. And as much as I don't want it to be, I know you're going to make it my problem, but it's really not my problem. That's the truth. I get people that make those calls all the time.
And so I've got a client right now I'm working with where he doesn't really have much for debt.
Awesome.
And it's going to be more of an IBC than a debt-free life. And he is planning on buying a house.
Awesome.
A second home, actually. And so because the other one is pretty much unencumbered. And so again, if I'm trying to look at, like, maybe he wants to use, he wants to put some funding into it and then take the money out and use it as a down payment on another home, right? A significant payment on another home. That, again, I know it depends on what the relationship is to what he put in and what he took out, but let's say they're close to maximizing it. How does that, like, it's still, like, even if the cost of money is 7.75 or 1 or 2%, it's still way better than anywhere else, right?
So that's an easy decision. And the answer is take the max. Why? Because your net cost of money is 2% versus if you're financing it, what interest rate are you going to get, especially on a second home? You're not getting it lower than 2%. You're not getting it lower than 4%. So it's a no-brainer financially to max encumber your program. Just keep making payments on it. Don't sacrifice it. Max encumber the program, because you just self-finance that mortgage for 2% net cost as opposed to whatever that mortgage interest rate is that you just got from your lender. That's a no-brainer.
And then just let that interest. I mean, this is an older gentleman, and just let that interest accrue and let the death benefit take care of it when it needs to. Let it just come out of the death benefit.
That's certainly a feasible way. Yep.
Yeah.
Again,
is there a better way?
What's more efficient? Paying off the loan, chasing 3%, or paying off the mortgage at whatever, it's just a math calculation. It just depends on what their interest rate is on their mortgage.
Right. Awesome. Appreciate it, brother. That helped a lot.
Yep. All right.
I do have another question.
Yay, Miss Laureen.
So I was dumbfounded and I couldn't actually talk. So it was very strange for me, but I had a prospect recently that had very little debt. I mean, 2 debts, a car and his mortgage. He refinanced the mortgage 3 years ago, so he had 27 years left on it. Very inexpensive rate, 2.25%. And I don't remember what the time frame was of paying off that mortgage, but they were paying an extra $400 on the car payment. And so that was the money that I used to do the illustration, was the $400. Recommended he stop over contributing to his 401k over the match, but he didn't like that. So we just used the $400. And the decision was on his part, was that no, if they paid off that mortgage too soon, well, then they would lose their income tax deduction. And I was so dumbfounded, I couldn't even speak. So what should I have said?
You really like your income tax deduction off your mortgage? Yeah, you do? Okay. Do you like making your mortgage payment? You do? You don't? Okay. How old are you? Are you 62? Yeah. Okay. You better write this one down, folks. This is a big nugget right here. I'll tell you what. Why don't we do a home equity reclaim loan? And let's go ahead and completely encumber your property. And let's make it so you don't have to make a payment anymore on your property ever again. And let's make it so you can control your income tax simply by making payments into your home equity reclaim loan. Because then you're going to get a 1098 and you can write off whatever you spent because you're paying off mortgage interest, which is still a write-off. So you didn't lose anything, but now you have complete control over your taxable income. Did you get that, Lorene?
Not really. I got to digest that again. So
That's huge.
Yeah, because you're going to get it. You're going to get an interest. What you're saying, Scott, are you saying you're going to get an interest statement from, if you're using a traditional lender, you're going to get an interest paid on your loan. You get to write that off, right? As a
You get
tax,
to write off
tax
the interest on the loan, right? But if you're using a home equity reclaim loan, that's different. That's not you have a loan and the property's completely encumbered and you don't have to pay on the loan. But everything that's on the loan is interest. And if you decide that you want to make a payment on that loan, you can, and 100% of what you pay is going to be a write-off, as opposed to every time you make a mortgage payment right now, proportionally interest and principal. So in this case, you're making 100% of your quote unquote mortgage payment as an interest payment, which means 100% of your mortgage payment becomes a write-off. And you can maneuver up and down within that type of loan if you want.
So then my next question is, what is a home equity reclaim loan? Is that a lot different than a HELOC?
Yes. Yep.
So where do I go to read about that and find out about it?
Movement Mortgage is a good place.
Okay.
So Scott, the other thing I think would be important to point out too, where clients might potentially say, well, what about the tax benefit of my mortgage interest? Well, there's not a lot of people that are getting benefits these days from their mortgage interest because the standard deduction is so darn high. I think it's almost, I think in 2024, it's going to be over $29,000 as a standard deduction. So you have to exceed that before you're even going to get a benefit on any other itemized deductions, including mortgage interest. And I think a lot of people don't realize that when they say, oh, I'm going to get a tax benefit on my mortgage interest. Well, you might not if you're below that standard deduction. You're not going to get any benefit.
Yeah. So when someone says that tells me that they've been reading something or watching too much TikTok. They don't have a CPA. They don't know taxes, and they're just looking to try to be argumentative.
Okay. Or maybe just listening too much DR.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else got any fun stuff like Lorene? I love that stuff, Lorene. Thank you. That was fun. All right, I'm going to give you a case study, and then we don't necessarily need to keep going, but we can if anybody else has any other questions. So here's a quick case study. That thing that I just told you about, Lorene, we did one last night. Okay. And what happened, this is a 77-year-old gentleman who's on a fixed income. He's got an $850 a month mortgage payment, a $385 a month car payment, and he makes a total of $2,200 a month. After food, power, electricity, gas for the car, insurance, his cell phone, his Netflix, and all that stuff, he's got about $100 a month left over, and that's it. His problem is not anything other than cash flow. He's got equity in his home. He's got $60,000 equity, he says, in his home. He's at a 60% loan to value on the home. So that means he's got 40% that's not encumbered. Using that HECM loan, he'll be able to stop making mortgage payments. He'll have access to the equity, and his plan was to leave the property to his sister. And his sister says, I don't want the property, I don't want the money, but he wants to leave something to somebody. So we just freed up $1,100 because he's going to pull enough money out to pay off the car, get rid of that $385. We're going to reduce his actual monthly mortgage payment, which is PITI right now, down to just TI. So it's going to drop down to about $200. So we've got a net delta of $800 a month that's getting ready to happen for him. So he's going to be having plus $800 as opposed to plus $100 a month. And now he can afford a $300 whole life policy to leave something for his sister, rather than leaving a house that his sister, who lives 1,000 miles away, is going to have to come out, get ready to sell, fix it up, hire a realtor, go through that whole process, put it on the market, negotiate the contract, all that stuff associated with selling a property. Now she doesn't have to do it. And he still gets to do it. So this is one of those outside the box solutions that I think you're going to see a lot more happening as money becomes tighter and tighter, especially as you move forward with Social Security being reduced. So there you go. Anybody get anything out of that one? Look at
I have a case I want to talk to you about then.
I'm sorry?
I have a case I want to talk to you about then,
Okay.
offline.
All right, we can do that.
Okay.
All right. So in absence of doing a formal, thanks, George, a formal presentation, which I'm sure you folks, if you've been here, you've seen it, or if you want to see my formal presentation, just go to YouTube. There's tons of them up there. I have a new one that I'm still working on. I just haven't had time to get it completed yet. If there's nobody else with any other question, then I'm going to let you guys go early, about 25 minutes early tonight. But I got to know, look at Marcus. Hey, that's what Marcus is doing to me. Marcus, what's up, buddy? Hey.
Hey, there it is. Hey, sorry, it's a little dark out here already, but yeah, I just heard about your call, so I decided to get on. I've been really interested in these DFLs.
Nice.
I've run like 3 apartments with Ruth, and I just don't quite understand it, so I'm just going to keep watching your videos so I can plug in and have some intelligent questions.
Right on, man. Well, if you think about it, go to the YouTube channel. There's tons of them up there, the old presentations. There's also a lot of I've got about probably 6 or 8 advanced topics that we cycle through over time. And just watch them. And if you like it, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like it, let me know what you don't like about it, and we can talk about it. And if you get a chance to subscribe, that helps too. All right.
Absolutely, will do. And I also heard that you were the numbers man. So I had some business metrics I wanted to review, and everyone says Scott would be the guy to talk to about that if you want to dig into numbers.
I don't know about that, but I'm happy to help if I can. All right.
Okay, I'll get in touch with you. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Well, if there's no other questions, then I'm going to say thank you very, very much for showing up. Hopefully you got something out of this. And I wish everybody a great rest of the week. At what today's Thursday, right? One more day. See you guys. And thanks for showing up for the last February 29th deal of this year. 4 more years before the next one of these. You guys are awesome. Bye.
Awesome.